Hey guys, it's Sphere System here. Hopefully an interesting video. I'm going to give some book recommendations. Um, all fiction, mostly fun reads as well. Aren't necessarily favourites and haven't been ordered based on favouritism, just, these are books we enjoy. Um, anyway, first recommendation is The 100-Year-Old Man Who Climbed Out the Window and Disappeared by Jonas Jonasson. This book is, um, yeah, well, everything from Jonas Jonasson uh, has been the only author we've found, and this book is probably the best example of it, where we have been able to laugh out loud, out in public, reading, which is reasonably high praise as far as we're concerned. Um, especially given the amount we've read over the years, just for escapism purposes. Um, and this is in and of itself reasonably high praise, obviously, but um, it's more impressive because of the commentary made in the books on recent history and geopolitics, which is difficult to do in a humorous way, certainly, but it's achieved within these books. So, you know, definite recommendation there. Okay, next book is The Psychology of Time Travel by Kate Mascarenhas. Um, Honestly, we don't know what to say about this book. It's difficult to know what to say because the only way we can think to describe it would spoil the book, which isn't something we want to do. So, um, suffice to say, it manages to ask some very interesting questions in interesting ways, and it's a which is more impressive given the length. It's a relatively short book, anyway, um, with highly engaging plot and well developed characters, and despite that, it asks some very interesting questions. So that's always good. Um, okay, the next recommendation is Candlemoth by R.J. Ellery. This is not an easy or fun read. This recommendation. This is, however, a very interesting and potentially insightful read. It takes quite a interesting, relatively deep look into the not modern, but historical justice system, and we use justice in quotes there, of the USA. Um, you know, and the racism obviously involved there. Um, so that's interesting, certainly. We can't necessarily speak perfectly to its accuracy, given that it's not something we lived through, but you know, it was a fascinating read. Um, and yeah, probably in our top 10 books, fiction books ever, certainly. Well, yeah, not certainly, but probably in our top 10 fiction books ever. And was also an absolute bargain. We managed to find it ridiculously cheap in a secondhand store and picked it entirely based on the title, which doesn't actually give much of anything away. So we were quite happily surprised when we read it by just how good it was. Right? Okay, next is The Colour of Magic by Terry Pratchett. Now, we recommend Colour of Magic specifically here because it's a good introduction to Discworld for a slightly older, more mature audience, and Terry Pratchett is a master of characterization. So, you know, it's a obviously fascinating read. Well, not obviously fascinating, but anyone that knows that Pratchett's work will recognise that this is going to be excellent. And anyone that doesn't, we recommend reading some Pratchett, especially the Discord series, but any of it. Well, and Colour of Magic is a good starting off point for that. So, yes, That's why we're recommending that. If you're looking for other recommendations from Terry Pratchett, We Free Men and Trucks are both good jumping off points for a younger audience that are more digestible. Now, Trucks isn't Discworld and it's definitely for the youngest audience, but any of these books are potentially a good choice. So, you know, whatever you want from there. Cool. Okay. Final one. Our final recommendation is the Malazan Book of the Fallen by Stephen Erickson. And yes, this is basically us cheating on recommending a book, as this is 10 volumes, and reasonably large volumes at that. But the title of the series is Book in it, and this is our video, so we're allowing it. Anyway, we don't recommend you let the size put you off, because this is one of the most interesting worlds with the best characterizations we've ever read. In fact, probably the best world and characterization we've ever read. This is incredibly impressive, given that there's characters that feel realistic, and those are not all human characters either, right? There are non-human characters that both feel non-human and realistic, which is rare, right? It's not like, oh yes, here's just the gimmick that makes this character non-human. It's like, no, this is a full species that feels fully realized, that just happens to not be human, and doesn't feel human, but feels understandable in their motivations, both as a species and as individuals. It all makes sense, which is great. And the plot is surprisingly followable. Well, plots. Although, arguably, it's a single plot, depending on how you look at it, despite the jumping from chapter to chapter between viewpoints and plot points then as well. Which, it's incredibly difficult to maintain a large, diverse cast of characters well put together across various plot lines and across a massive story without limiting which of those characters you show. Obviously each chapter doesn't necessarily show all the characters, but they do all get screen time throughout, which is incredibly difficult to achieve effectively, and they have done. So, we are quite impressed with that. This system signing out. Hope to catch you all next week. Please do remember to like, subscribe, comment, especially if you've got any questions you want answered. Be happy to answer them either in the comments or in another video. So, catch you all next week.